This meeting is being recorded.
This meeting is being recorded. There we go. All right. Hello, everyone. We're back after like laptop chaos. So today I have Emily Fae with me, who I've come across just in my random, things that I do in Facebook. And because I am a chaos agent, I found somebody who's not, and somebody who runs a program called Calm to Chaos. And it's interesting because the whole big thing with Marie Kondo and tidying up and, minimalist things that have been going on for years, which sounds really exciting to me and is like my dream in my house. Well, Emily actually does that work, and she does a specialist version of that work focusing on people who are neurodivergent and women who have issues with ADHD and autism and things like that, and how it kind of all works together to make life a little bit easier when it's a little less chaotic in your own personal environment, which is kind of exciting. So I really like that idea. So hello, Emily. Welcome to Core Element Live.
Hello, thanks for having me.
I'm really excited that you're here. So I just kind of wanted to start with what is a KonMari Consultant and what it is that you actually do.
Yes, of course. So the KonMari method was founded by the lovely Marie Kondo, who has dedicated her life to tidying up, and she went through a whole host of different methods that always seemed to unravel, and she seemed to always come back to chaos. And so she drew different bits from all of those methods, and she created her own method, which she found was much more beneficial and actually helped people to get to a point where they didn't bounce back to chaos, right? Because we've all done that, where we're like, right, I'm going to get organized, and you make the room look beautiful, and then you literally turn around for a second and turn back and it's like chaos again. And this method works really well to stop that bounce back. And it does that in a way that is different to a lot of other methods, in that it works with categories rather than spaces or rooms. And in that way, you really start to see the amount of stuff that you have, and it really helps you with the decluttering element of it. So when you start with clothes, and when you get all of your clothes in one place, that includes you get everything out the loft that you've put up in the loft, that you're storing away, everything under your bed, from the washing basket, everything in one place, and you see the amount that you have, you can really look at, do I need all of this? Is this all of this bringing me joy? When we tend to sort by room, because by our nature, particularly if we've got a bit cluttered and chaotic, we tend to keep things in lots of different places. So then you might be sorting, so for example, clothes, you're sorting your clothes, but you haven't thought about all the stuff that you've got up in the loft. So you're still keeping loads of clutter in your home. So then at some point that all comes down when you swap over to summer clothes, or you remember that you've got some bits up there, or you lose some weight and get some other clothes out, and then you're just chaotic and cluttered again. So it works really well from that point of view. The categories that you go through, you start with clothes, because Marie Kondo found that starting with clothes is the simplest one. The method also uses the joy checking method. So instead of choosing what to discard, we choose what to keep. So we choose what sparks joy for us. And that allows us to keep in a really positive mind frame. And when we're letting go of items, we're not just going, oh, I don't want this anymore, or I need to get rid of this. We're saying, do you know what, this doesn't bring me joy anymore, but I'm really grateful for the reason it came into my life, and you can let it go again with gratitude and with joy. So it keeps a really high vibe element to decluttering, rather than that kind of, I've got to like get rid of so many of these things because it's all too much. So, you know, you can keep as much as you want in the KonMari method. But once you start going through the method, you'll be surprised at how much you do actually want to let go of.
That sounds like
yeah. So you start with clothes, then you move on to books. Although this is a category that is becoming a more interesting category for us when we were training, because actually a lot of people don't have books anymore, right? Where a lot of people have got Kindle or online and things. I'm still a book lover, so I had a lot of books.
Our house is mostly clutter is books.
Yeah, but it was interesting when I was working with clients. It surprised me how many clients just don't have books or have very few books. For me, I grew up in a house that was like a library, so my house is like that as well. But books is the next category. Then you move on to paperwork. Then it's kimono, which is basically everything else in your home. And then there's sentimental. Sentimental obviously comes last because it's the most complex category. And as we go through the other categories, anything that has any sentimentality connected to it can be kicked to the end, to that category. It doesn't have to be, it can be something really random, but is really sentimental. It might be that you're like I've got a pair of kitchen scissors that were my mum's and I can't bear to get rid of them. So they're like, that would have been kicked to my sentiment. I couldn't sort that with the normal scissors because it's got more of an attachment for me. And the reason that I love the method in terms of supporting those with a neurodivergent mind is that each category is split down into subcategories. So you can split it right down into really tiny categories. So for example, with clothes, you know, you can split it right down into socks, and then you sort all your underwear, and then your t-shirts, and you can sort that into like long sleeve tops and short sleeve tops, so that you don't have to tackle the massive pile all at once if you don't want to. You can just separate it out and you're really thinking about just one simple thing. It's great, load of different hits of dopamine, which is brilliant for those of us with ADHD. And it just enables you to really focus on that one thing and get that sorted. And then you move on to the next categories. You also look at storage solutions at the end rather than as you go along. So you do store things, but what Marie Kondo talks about in her method is that you get to the end and you're really surprised that actually you don't need as much storage as you thought you needed. So one of my toxic traits was buying storage. Like I had a real storage addiction and I still do. I have to really stop myself buying storage. But when we're in a cluttered environment, when our home has become really overwhelming, we have this belief that, well, if I just buy more storage to store all these items in, and I just buy this, or I need a bigger home, or I need more space. And actually, when we actually go through the method and you sort all your clothes, suddenly you have all this space, all this spare storage, all these different places that you can actually utilize that you didn't even realize that you had. So it's quite an empowering method. And at every point, it's all about thinking about your whys as to why you have all these items in your home, what you want to have in your home, and what sort of has led you to having those items, or having the clutter and the chaos that you felt that you had, and changing a lot of habits that have led you up to that point. So again, that's another way that it differs from some other tidying methods, in that it really helps you to reframe things and to work on your mindset around organising and bringing things into your home, as well as the physical act of decluttering.
Yeah, and it's a big thing, isn't it? Because people get overwhelmed so easily. And it's interesting listening to you say all that, because I do tend to do like the sock drawer. and then, something else, and then something else. Yeah. Then the tiny little wins, because starting off even with the whole room sometimes is so overwhelming that I just won't do it. I'll just find something else to do.
It's absolutely that. And that's where, again, I always like to think of having a professional organizer. It's a bit like having a personal trainer. Like, we can all exercise, right? We all know what we're supposed to do. You can just go and do it, but having someone there by your side doing it with you just helps keep you motivated, keep you on track, keep your energy levels up, because it's a marathon when you're doing
actually it's more fun to share with somebody who knows what they're doing. And like, that's a really good example of the personal trainer, because somebody can go to a gym, they can use all the equipment, and they go back and actually they're kind of going back and doing the same thing and not really progressing like they should. Whereas with somebody like you, with a professional organizer coming in and really coming through the space and supporting you through the process of going something like that, that's huge. That's a big thing, because overwhelm in this kind of space, and particularly in people who have different levels of neurodivergent stuff going on, it's very easy to kind of go into shut down over the whole thing and walk away.
Absolutely. Go into paralysis and also get distracted. That's one of the things that I help my clients with as well, is staying on track, because it can get so distracting, and also it can get really tempting to get carried away. Like, oh, do you like more and more and more? And again, with the analogy of a personal trainer, they can help rein you in so that you don't overdo it. And it's the same with organising, because, if you go mad, then you burn yourself out. And it's a process, and it does take time if you want to really get to get it done in a way that's not going to cause you more chaos or cause you to stop at some point and not complete it.
And just give up.
Yeah.
Kind of where I am, I guess.
We've all done it. God, that's how I used to be. I was forever, and you do it, and you do it in a basis where you've tidied everything so that there's nothing that you can see, but those cupboards stuffed with all those things that you're like, I'm not sure what to do with that, I'll just put it in there, it's out of the way now. Those things, are still there, and that clutter is still there.
And dogs and sand and seasons and everything else, and the copious amounts of 20 pairs of shoes and boots and all that. It gets a bit chaotic, and it just I tidy something up, and then 5 minutes later they come home from school and it's all back.
And I have found that the method works really well with children as well. The children really get on board with the method, and particularly with the idea of joy checking, because for children that's a really relatable way of looking at their items, because children can connect with joy much more easily than we can as adults, because they're already there all the time, right? That's where they often spend a lot of their time. So they really love that aspect of it. So my girls love, I just find them going through going, I'm just joy checking my stuff and making space for new things to come in, and they really love it. They love getting involved in that, and that regular sort of checking of things. And do all these things still bring me joy? Particularly with children, it is something that they are going to need to do a lot in their life as they're growing up, because they get to different developmental stages, and that having that ownership over, it's time for me to let go of this stuff now, because I'm stepping into this part of my life. It's a really great method for children to have that skill as they grow up.
And it is a skill, and I think it's a practice skill, and that whole thing that you don't have to carry your entire childhood with you. You can just bring the key things that you really are in love with. I'm going to go in it, and we've got copious amounts of hedgehogs with names, which is very
That's so
There's
sweet.
loads of them, they're everywhere. They are everywhere, all shapes, all sizes, different colors.
Oh, I love it.
Very sweet. But those, like, they're 17 now.
Yeah.
But the hedgehogs have prime place still in the room, which is very sweet, actually.
I love that. That's great. But because if it's still bringing them joy, then that's brilliant. But it's a case of it's lovely that you're saying that they're on display and stuff as well, because that's one of the key things that Marie Kondo teaches in her method, is that it's great to keep things and you keep as much as you want, but make sure that you're utilizing it, that you're enjoying it. If it brings you joy, then have it out, have it displayed, be able to enjoy it. So we share a lot of tips and techniques to particularly work with a lot of your sentimental items and how to really display those or utilize them in a way, rather than just putting them in a box somewhere and thinking, well, I want to keep them. But if you're keeping items just in a box somewhere, you're not actually connecting with them and feeling that joy that they bring to you. And there are so many different ways that you can still capture that joy from those items without cluttering yourself up.
That's true. What brought you into the journey into deciding? Were you always just like in chaos and decided to suddenly sort yourself out, or did you just kind of, because some of my friends are like really good at stuff and they're really like OCD about cleaning or OCD about certain things, and they're really keyed into it, and that's part of their talent, of life skills and things that they're blessed with, really. Yeah. Was there a particular thing that brought you into this that made you decide to do the training? And
so I've been on a very spiritual sort of enlightenment journey over the last few years, and since I was late diagnosed autistic and ADHD, so only about 4 years ago. And so since then, I have been doing a lot of inner work and connecting with who I am and understanding about a lot of the struggles that I had. And in that process, I've read a lot of books and connected with a lot of different people and their ideas and their thoughts that have helped me in being able to heal parts of myself and to really connect with those parts that are actually who I truly am. And as part of that journey, I read Marie's book, and I just really connected with it. And it was really interesting because it made me remember stuff about my childhood, because I'd spent a large amount of my adult life being told that I was messy and disorganized and chaotic, which I was a lot of the time. But I now realize that's because I was actually messy and chaotic in my mind, and the two were affecting each other, which is why I call my business Calm Space, Calm Mind, because when your space is calm, your mind is calm, and vice versa. But for me, it was definitely when my space gets chaotic, I know that my mind is chaotic and I need to slow down. So that is what had happened to me. And when I remembered back to my childhood, I used to drive my mum insane because I constantly used to rearrange everything and tidy everything and organize everything. And my mum was very chaotic. She was an academic, and she was like the classic, what you would think of an academic. And she was like the most brilliant brain, but she was just completely chaotic in every other area of her life. So our house was often very chaotic, and she used to get really cross at me because I'd tidy up her stuff. She'd be like, I don't know where anything is now. And so thinking back, actually, it was a trait that I've always had there to be, I always wanted everything to be organized. I had a need for things to be a certain way, and obviously that's to do with my neurodivergent brain, but it's also something that I've learned is that as we are all different, those of us with neurodivergences, and we all tend to have something that we are really good at. And so for me, organizing homes and stuff, like, absolutely adore. But there are other things that I really struggle with and I need help with. So in terms of like organizing like the admin in my business and stuff, I find that quite difficult to manage. So I need help with that. And then therefore, but there's a lot of people who it's the home stuff that they really struggle with, but they can, like, you know, organize business, they can make amazing business plans and things like that. And so I also run groups for neurodivergent entrepreneurs where we all come together to support each other by using our different skills to help each other out, because we all have different superpowers, if you will, of what we excel in. So for me, it turns out that organizing homes and spaces was what I felt. It was kind of like a coming home for me, finding that book, reading it. I just connected with it so much and realized that, yeah, this is what I'm good at. And it's what I've been brought here to do, basically. And I love it. I get such a dopamine rush from supporting people to make their spaces more organized and to let go of things. And I had such a profound experience doing that. And I was talking to you beforehand about how I still am going through that process all the time. So I am working towards a more minimalist life. I'm by no means a minimalist, and I'm not sure I can ever go quite that far, because yeah, that's maybe, I mean, maybe one day I will. Say, I never say never, but it's not quite where I'm at now. But I am really enjoying keep checking in with the amount of stuff that I've got in my home, and each time letting go of more and more stuff, and how liberating that is, and how much it energizes my space, it energizes me, it makes me feel freer. And I have the same with my children as well. We moved house at the beginning of this year, and we actually decluttered their toys by at least 50%, and it has had the most amazing effect. They play much better. They are less stressed when it's tidying up time and things, because they haven't got out. Even if they get all their toys out now, it's like not like I can't find my house anymore, you know. But they actually play so much better. They're using their imaginations more. They're becoming more creative. They're arguing less. It's had a really amazing effect, and they really enjoyed the process. Surprisingly, I thought it was going to be a bit of a battle, but it wasn't. They actually have started to have this understanding that, you know, they get more out of life with the less that they have, and that, you know, we use a lot of libraries. They get to play with other toys when they go to other friends' houses and things like that. So they still get access to a wide range of resources, but we don't have to have them all in our home all at once. And that's been really great. And it's an ongoing process for us.
That's cool. Do you mind if I bring you back a little bit, just in terms
of
sure.
Sorry.
diagnosis of the ADHD and autism stuff? How did that change things? Like, you know, in terms of, you said it was about 4 years ago, is that right?
Yeah.
Going through your life and being aware that there's things that are in chaos and a struggle, and then suddenly having a diagnosis that kind of clarifies certain things for you. Did it make it easier? Did it make it harder? I have many friends who were late diagnosis, in their late 30s.
Yeah.
With ADHD or autism or different levels of neurodivergent type stuff. And it has made such a tremendous difference for some of them to kind of go, oh, that's why I do that. That's why my brain does that, you know, because for us, like we work with a lot of different kids in particular, and different age groups, and we think of it as the brain imbalance in terms of things are functioning differently and the neurocircuitry is different, you know. So I'm just curious to know how that felt for you, you know.
Yeah, it was pretty life-changing for me. I had struggled with my mental health from a very young age, and I was on medication from the age of 18 till well, in fact, I hadn't until I had children, so in my early 30s, so quite a long time. And I did lots and lots of different therapies, and lots of them were not effective, which also then made me feel worse about myself. I was like, well, now I know why, because there are so many conventional therapies that are not effective for those of us with neurodivergent minds. And so I spent a lot of time feeling less than, and feeling like there was something wrong with me. Why could I not function in the world? Why did I find things more difficult than other people? Why were people expecting so much of me and I could never deliver? And getting the diagnosis was like, it was so freeing for me. It was permission to say, it's okay. It's okay to find things challenging. It's okay to be different. It's okay to be quirky. It's okay. You know, it's exhausting masking all the time, but it's more exhausting when you don't know you're doing it. When you think that that's just who you are, and why am I exhausted all the time? At least now I have an awareness that, you know, I still mask now because it's all I've ever known. So it's quite hard when you kind of, that is a hard thing of it, when you suddenly go, oh, so who am I now? Which bits of me are the masking and which bits of me are actually me? So it's it can be quite unnerving from that point of view, because you're suddenly like, oh, have I lost who I am? Or, you know, how do I reconnect with the core of who I am? So from that point of view, it can be quite a journey, but it's definitely, for me, it has been, and I'm yet to meet anyone who's had a diagnosis and it be a negative thing for them. You know, I know there's a lot of people who feel they don't need the diagnosis, they don't want a label or anything like that. For me, it helps me have a confidence in being able to present myself to people and be able to say, yeah, you know, I'm proud of who I am. And I feel like people can understand me more, and I feel accepted more by being able to explain, this is who I am. And, you know, therefore, if I'm a bit quirky, that's why.
It's interesting. So I wonder sometimes, like, you know, in terms of the general culture, that there's a real lack of compassion for people who are struggling, because people are so busy rushing through things and want this done, that done, this done, this done, you know, like some kind of military order.
Yeah.
And for those of us who are a little bit more creative and take different pathways and just do things differently because we think differently, that there is a distinct lack of compassion around that, you know, my way isn't wrong because I do it differently.
Yeah.
You know, and
exactly. And I think people are quick to, you know, there's the age-old thing with oh, we're all on the spectrum and we're all a little bit like that. I used to get it when I had a friend who when I was depressed, she'd say, oh yeah, but we all get a bit depressed at times and things like that. And it's like, I know that people do it to connect with you and to try and like understand, but it can be so damaging because, you know, actually these things can be really debilitating for people and can, you know, you are struggling. And so for people to kind of dismiss like that, it is that lack of compassion. And they're not trying to be like that, but it's just, as you say, a cultural thing that we're quick to judge people and we're quick to dismiss rather than being quick to be compassionate. And if we all showed more compassion to each other, you know, I don't think there would be a need for people to seek the diagnoses in the way that people are at the moment, and in the way that it seems like this huge rush of people wanting to get these diagnoses. What they're looking for is compassion. Yeah. What they're looking for is understanding. They're not looking for a label. They're saying to people, they're screaming out, we want to be seen and heard and understood, and stop making out like we're weak, you know, and that we're not okay. And actually, I think if as a society we were more compassionate, I think there would be less of a need for people to find a label.
Why do you think, like, when you think about, you know, so many young kids that really struggle and go through life into adulthood now, why do you think, like, in terms of, like, you know, their first call is to put people on medication instead of actually take a look at what's happening for you? Right. And like, I have a real issue with that, because like there might be a time and place for medication with people, but the side effects of that are pretty severe. And then also, why does it take so long for them to consider that actually it's a neurodiverse issue instead of there's something wrong with you that needs medicating?
Yeah.
It's a sticking point. I don't.
It's something that I really struggle with, because I think that our world has become more and more, not more and more, less and less suitable for those of us with neurodivergent minds. It's so busy, it's so overwhelming, it's so stimulating. And for children in particular, we're expecting them to do so much. And, you know, even as babies, you've got to take them to all these baby things, and you've got to show them all these colourful toys and all of these crazy things. Yeah, exactly. Like, you have to spend time with them. Just let the child be. They don't need to be going to theme parks and farms all the time and doing all these crazy activities. They can just be, like you say, go to the park, just be in the garden, just be. And I think because life is like that, more and more people with neurodivergences are struggling, and particularly in the school system with the way that schools are now.
Yeah, and it's all on screen time. It's it's the worst thing for anybody that's neurodivergent is too much. It's because it's like mainlining cocaine, you know. Yeah,
it's absolutely that. And one of my passions is, obviously, because I work with spaces, is the fact that all of our public spaces are not designed to support people, even neurotypical people, with the way that they are, how loud everywhere is, the lights, all of those things are just, it's not designed to support people. It's not calming, it's not relaxing. And then we wonder why everyone's stressed.
Yeah.
Like, you're just bombarded. I find it when I'm driving. I'm like, there's too much information being thrown at me. I can't concentrate on just driving. You know, when you go out into the countryside and you're just driving, it's blissful. It's like, but when you're in
that, there's tractors, there's animals.
Well, that's true.
People on bikes.
Yeah, people in fast cars going right up up your rear end. Yeah, no, I get no, exactly. But it's everywhere. We're just bombarded all the time. And I think, you know, when they talk about in the past there wasn't all these people, and I think that there were, but they could manage better because life was simpler, life was slower. You know, things weren't 24 hours. Things weren't, you know, weekends were weekends to relax, and you know, it was quieter. There wasn't as much hustle and bustle. You didn't have, you know, the internet bombarding you every second of every day. And I think everyone's just in a constant state of overwhelm, and for those of us with neurodivergent minds, that has much more impact and much more of a negative consequence in many aspect.
It's interesting too that you said it, because the other thing is that you need to give your self-permission to not have to engage.
Yeah.
Not have to have your phone on, computer on, blah, blah, blah on, not be accessible 24 hours. And just because the society is 24 hours doesn't mean you have to be.
exactly that.
I think people forget
Exactly.
that actually it's your life. You can still choose to differently.
You can press the off button.
Yes.
I forget my phone even turns off, right?
Yeah. So yeah. I don't know. It's funny because recently I lost my laptop, which has been chaos because everything's on it. But then I had 2 weeks of actually not being able to do stuff in the evenings that I would normally be doing to catch up. So I'm behind on a lot of things. But at the same time, I didn't really miss it. It wasn't a bad thing that way. But when it's interesting about the whole chaos thing as well. I went into the Apple store in Regent Street in London because I was up there for a seminar. So I'll just go in and I've got the insurance thing. I'll get the laptop replaced, and you go into this place, and it is literally neurodivergent hell. Because it's this massive, like 3-story high ceiling building with 40 tables with different laptops and like 600 people in the space. And then there's on the far wall, there's a class going on. So somebody's talking through a microphone with a speaker. It's literally deafening in there, and there's sound bouncing off every corners. And I had a skull fracture a few years ago, and so my hearing on this side isn't great. And like one-to-one like this, not a problem. In a space like that, I'm kind of like, I really have to, I can't hear you. So then I lip read, right? And of course you have to go in and you sign in and blah, blah, blah. And this guy comes over and he's wearing a mask. And I thought, okay, now I'm in trouble. This is already going wrong, and I just I listened to him and I asked him a question. And I'm like, I actually can't hear what you're saying. And because I can't see you, I can't read your lips in the noise either. And so he was like, yeah, okay, I'll find somebody else. So he goes over to find somebody else. The manager comes over and she's like, what's the problem? I'm like, I can't hear him properly. So I have 2 questions I want to ask before I make my purchase. I just need them answered. So I gave her the 2 questions. She's like, blah, 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 blah. Well, I'll find somebody to help you. I don't understand what the problem is. I can hear him perfectly well. And so can everybody else.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God. And I was so shocked,
Wow.
It's like, wow, that was amazing customer service from the manager. Okay. So I just kind of nodded at her and she went off to, go find somebody else. And I just kind of packed up my stuff and I walked out.
Yeah, good for you.
I just kind of went, wow, and it was interesting because I thought I could moan about it, but I think about other people who actually have really serious issues hearing or really serious issues with ADHD or autism and just need a space where there isn't all that overwhelming stuff. And like most people say, well, just order online. I'm like, yeah, but I also needed to see the stuff.
And you have to, right?
Investment. And I would like to just, know what I'm buying. And
I think what's really interesting there as well is I wonder the impacts that space was having on her. So we think that people that like we find that we behave in ways like, that's the thing when you have a cluttered home, like particularly as a mother, when it's busy and the kids are there and stuff, when everything's cluttered, you lose it a hell of a lot quicker than when everywhere's tidy and clean. And I find it myself, and I'm like, and I think, why am I losing it?
Living in this wireless zone.
Yeah, and I mean that how it was horrific how she behaved to you, but gosh, my heart almost goes out to her when we talk about wanting to be more compassionate, because working in a place like that, it must be hell. Even if you're not neurodivergent, and just for neurotypicals, that no one
overwhelmed
is in that. Yeah. And then it just impacts everybody then. And it's just, I think, an awareness of space. We just don't have that. They
need you.
They
need you to come in and redesign their spaces.
Yeah, that's my mission moving forward. Is I want to start, those conversations about public spaces and how they, you know, how we can get these bigger companies to get on board with going, actually, hold on a minute, what are we doing here? Because, you know, there is a focus on wanting to support those with neurodivergences and to be more accessible and things. And it's like, you need to look at your spaces.
Yeah,
it's very well training your staff, but if you're not changing your spaces, you're still not making anything accessible.
Yes. Yeah, very true. Very true. Yeah, it was really quite shocking, the whole experience, like when I got out of there. And it's interesting because you go from one crazy enclosed environment out to a London street, which is just as crazy. Yeah. You know, but at least there was air.
In a different way, yeah.
You know, and it was like, okay, you know, but yeah. And after that, I did go and look to just write to them to make a comment about that, because I thought, you know, that whole experience was so overwhelming and it shouldn't have been.
No.
You know, it really shouldn't have been. And I just thought, but there's nowhere to go.
Well, this is the problem. Yeah.
Nowhere to make a complaint. There's nowhere to make a comment about the service, on good or bad. You can't like write and say, I had the most amazing person help me today. So there's no positive feedback either. And I thought that was really amazing for a company that is that big, you know, that on either side, you can't make a comment, you know, whether you've good service.
I'm interested.
Just want to make a comment about their environment and that it's not a very friendly place to be. Yeah.
Interesting.
Very interesting. So yes, your whole spaces thing in Calm to Chaos needs to write a little note to Tim Wood.
Yeah, definitely.
Tim Cook, I think it is Tim Cook. So yeah, very interesting. So, but yeah, I just find that, because I think you're right. And I think the whole idea of the compassion on both sides, and the idea that spaces and environments that you work on, you know, the things that draw you in, plus the whole long history of going, you know, there's something not right. There's something, it's me. Well, it is you, but not in a bad way. You know,
exactly.
It's a huge stepping stone inwards to getting to know who you are, and then kind of fall in love with all the things that you are.
Yeah, absolutely that. And it's about as well, just finding the tools and strategies that help you, and making those little changes in your home, in your life, in the expectations you have on yourself. Just really, you know, I can function so much better now than I could. I mean, 4 years ago I was a mess, and now I would never think I would be doing what I'm doing now and functioning in the way that I am now back then. So, you know, it's once you have that understanding, you can then start to pick out the things that help you and allow you to thrive, basically, because that's all we're looking for. That's all we want to do, is to just make sure that we're all thriving in the best way possible.
And I think that's the beauty of coming through the experiences that you've had, because now when you come to a place where I've healed so much, and now I'm ready to reach back and hold my hand out to that next person, or to that next person, or to that next person, and you start to give back and you pay that forward, you know, which is beautiful. And I love that. And I think it's such a beautiful part of who you are, you know, and the things that you're offering are just, it's the inside stuff, which isn't tangible, but it's also all of the outside stuff, which is incredibly tangible.
Yeah.
You know, that whole inside outside interface.
Absolutely.
That's the word. I think that's really beautiful. And one of the things I came across on your website, which made me laugh, because I was like, what a paradigm shift for me. And it was 2 little words.
Yeah.
Tidying festival.
That's, you know, that is Marie Kondo's, that's what she calls it. And, you know, she has such a, like, I mean, if you've ever watched any of her shows, she just lights up at mess. She just sees it as the start of this beautiful journey, this festival that you're about to embark on. And
I'm going to use that on my kids, man. That
I
is
know, it's great though. You know what? It's all about mindset. It's mindset, right? Because if you think about it in that way, then it becomes fun. It becomes like, yeah, let's do this. When we're like, oh, if we called it tidying tasks, you'd be like,
yes.
that.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. No, when my daughter gets home today, I'm going to use that. We're going to have a tidying festival. And she'd be like,
yes.
Right.
Put some music on, get going. It's brilliant.
I love it. Because actually that makes me have a sense of humor about it and lifts that, like you said, that weight of like the task and the burden of having to like see the floor.
Yeah.
You know, move the sock grave. My daughter likes sock graveyards like every night.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
They
abandon them, don't they?
3 days later. Tidying festival. I'm totally in love with that whole concept.
It is great.
It's so, but thank you so much for being with me today. I really appreciate you sharing your personal experience and parts of your journey, because I think, you know, when people know part of where you've come from and, you know, the whole thing of just blossoming really into who you are now and who's in front of you in this moment, which is really beautiful, and sharing that. And so, you know, in our show notes, I'll put your details where people can get in touch with you. And there are some questions that you can use your service.
Ask any questions, and it'd be lovely to connect with people. Yeah,
and join you have a Calm to Chaos group, don't you, on Facebook or something?
Calm Space, Calm Mind.
That's it.
Yeah. They can come and join the community and find out more and find lots of tips and techniques and things to find their own calm space.
Beautiful. Wonderful. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.